After dominating the Indian racing scene for over 35 years and even reaching out to international racing events like the Dakar Rally, TVS realized that it had something missing in its portfolio. A full-fared sport bike with track-focused handling and clad with the latest tech. Enter the TVS Apache RR310. First displayed as a concept motorcycle at the 2016 Auto Expo, the development took 2 long years from concept stage to the final production version. TVS wanted to get this right as it would be their flagship model, and it's a huge leap forward from their previous flagship, the Apache RTR204V. The motorcycle features a 312cc single-cylinder engine producing 34 bhp of power at 9,700 rpm and 27.3 Nm of torque at 7,700 rpm. It also gets a trellis frame which keeps the weight down to 169.5 kgs, which is seriously impressive for a full-fared sport bike. Up front there is a 41mm upside down forks, and at the rear there is a monoshock which is rebound adjustable. Both are provided by reputed manufacturer Kayaba. On the braking department there is a 300mm single pedal disc up front with 4 piston calipers and steel braided lines. Rear brake is a 240mm single disc, and the bike gets dual channel ABS as standard. They took rider comfort into consideration before designing this bike and designed heat shields to keep the hot engine air away from the rider, and thoroughly wind tunnel tested it to give it the best in class aerodynamics. And I personally found while riding this, the wind protection was best among smaller motorcycles and rivaling some of the premium sport tourists that I've ridden. Something interesting they showed at the launch was a ram air intake up front and a shark fin-like grille at the side of the fairing to exhaust the hot air, something even the BMW S1000 RR has. By the way, I think you already know that BMW played a major role in the development of this motorcycle, and it's got that liquid cooling to keep the heating away as well, which is I think a mandatory for hot, humid climates like India. The Apache RR310 provided to me belongs to Niladri Basu, who also owns an R1, and if you're into fitness and some casual superbike motovlogs, then you can check out his newly launched YouTube channel. The Apache attracted a superbike owner like him because of the technical advancements. For example, the DO8C engine, which allows the single cylinder to be slanted towards the front, making for a longer swing arm, which gives it better straight line stability. The downside of that is with longer swing arm you do lose cornering agility, but with the reverse DO8C engine they could make the overall wheelbase shorter, so that gives the motorcycle agility. So it kind of strikes a balance between good cornering agility and at the same time with the longer swing arm for great straight line stability and mid corner stability as well. Niladri and I were discussing the same thing inside the cafe, and I said, well, that's mostly on paper, and it was time to put the theory to practice. It was finally time for the road test of the TVS Apache RR310. And now we will get to test the motorcycle. Doing about 151 km speedo indicated, which is pretty good. I guess this goes up to 160. Very stable motorcycle on the straights. Absolutely phenomenal motorcycle on the straights. I don't remember ever riding anything this small and having this much confidence on the straights. We did I think 162 or something like that, which is very impressive for a 300cc single cylinder engine
and I must say that it's a rev happy engine. I mean, definitely the acceleration is not that strong, but it has a very good feel as it builds up the power, and the aerodynamics is really coming in handy, especially when you're leaning down on the tank. I am super impressed by the aerodynamics. Today is not a very windy day at all, so even when I was riding the Z900, didn't feel that immense wind blast that we feel sometimes on the highway. But still, let's face it, this is a highway and there is not too much around us apart from a very high speed Z900. But anyways, there the gearbox had a false neutral for a second. That's the only thing that's been bothering me on this motorcycle. Everything else is perfect. Even the brakes, I mean, we've got a single disc up front, obviously, but the braking feel is very progressive. Not that much initial bite though, would have wanted a bit more initial bite, but it's stopping the bike and it's doing the job. But I still, you know, this is a pretty rapid bike for its size, and I would have wanted something a little bit more serious on the braking department. But I would say that it is, in the suspension setup, I'm really impressed. It's taking in the bumps quite well, but at the same time it's really holding that line on the straights. I think that's more due to the aerodynamic design than anything else. Obviously when we ride the RCs and all that, they are also very, very stable in high speeds, and that actually makes RC a very confidence inspiring bike to do those 150 km per hour kind of speeds, and that sometimes cause accidents as well. But even this bike has the same feel to it. I mean, it doesn't feel at all like an Indian made motorcycle, and we do know that we have some hand from BMW, let's call it the hand of God sort of thing. And obviously the refinement, I've never felt this level of refinement on previous motorcycles, but I do have to say that the previous bike, the Apache 200 4V, which I had reviewed over a year ago, also had this kind of refinement, but this time they have added oodles of power to that. So, you know, when you have less power, the motorcycle obviously feels you know, smoother, because there is no power jump. But this time the power's gone up and still it's smooth. And obviously, I mean, I'm not comparing anything with the big Z900 that's ripping it up, but still, for its size, I mean, I'm holding my own against a big bike if he is doing reasonable speeds. Now I'm going down into the tank, and we are 162 is the top speed of this motorcycle. It cannot do more than that, is what I personally feel. Best bike on the streets. Zero wind blast while you're on that position. I've never held that top speed on any motorcycle of this size for that long a time, because it always feels like you're getting wind blasted. It tires you out within seconds. On this bike, doesn't happen at all. Superbly impressed by the fairing and the aerodynamics. 100 kilometers per hour, 6th gear, put it and forget it. No vibrations when you're doing that kind of a speed. Well, maybe a slight buzz on the handlebars, a little bit on the foot pegs, not much. Handlebars, right handlebar is slightly buzzy. Okay, we can live with that. And I think we've just covered a lot of distance within that little time. So yeah, extremely good sport tourer. Now obviously we're gonna put it through some corners, lane changing and all that much we've already done, and it inspires a lot of confidence. I mean, I'm just riding this with one hand, which I shouldn't be doing, but lane changing does inspire a lot of confidence. And let's go, we have a corner, let's see what happens. Love it. Well, that was a pretty simple corner, but we were carrying quite a good amount of speed, and the bike, you know, it doesn't move around that much. That's one of the things that I'm looking for in these smaller segment motorcycles, and even some of the big nakeds, that the rear end normally moves out. on this bike it didn't happen. The more I ride, the more I get impressed with it. Yeah, the vibrations are a cause of concern, especially when you're doing 6th gear, 100 kilometers per hour. There is a certain amount of vibration on the, specifically on the right handlebar. I'm feeling it a bit more than the left. And this is like I'm wearing thick Dainese gloves, so that shouldn't happen actually. Now this is a motorcycle that has done quite a bit of running. It is 974 kilometers. I believe it's beyond its first service. So yeah, this is a pretty decent bike. Obviously as an owner you would get used to it because it's not one of those nerve-wracking vibrations, and especially when you're doing the lower speeds like 80 or stuff like that, it doesn't really bother you. But when you're taking a look at, like, when you're doing maybe above 100 or speeds like that, it does. I mean, with all that aerodynamic work that they have done with extremely good coverage for the rider, I think this thing, if it had a little bit of more refinement. Now when I'm talking about the power delivery, it is refined, the engine does feel refined, but when I'm talking about the vibrations, yeah, if they could have just eliminated that, this motorcycle would feel no shorter than the R3, because I've ridden the R3. It's a lot more expensive than this. The current model is coming at 3.8 lakh rupees and this is about 2.5 lakhs. So no competition in pricing. But I think if you can tune this motorcycle out to tune out the vibrations, this motorcycle actually makes a way more sense than R3. And we do have that dual channel ABS. R3 right now also gets the dual channel ABS, but previously it didn't have. So for this price point, 2.5 lakh rupees, a dual channel ABS, this level of aerodynamics, doing 160 kilometers per hour top speed, extremely good aerodynamic system, like I've said many times before, good straight line stability and decent amount of agility as well. It's not as agile as some of the bikes like the naked bikes, but yeah, even for something that is sporty, which has a front biased feel to it, it is pretty good. For the weight distribution, I wouldn't say that it is very front biased actually. It's kind of like a 60-40, and the heavy front end feel thing isn't there, but the front end does have a lot of feedback around it, and that is something that I obviously want when I'm doing cornering, and I'd like to go into that when we actually get some corners to test this motorcycle out. But for now, what I think is it'll do extremely well. Take a look, we are in 6th gear doing 60 kilometers per hour, and we're gonna try to pull off when we overtake this truck. So this is 6th gear acceleration from 60 kilometers per hour, and it was pretty decent. So you don't need to shift up and down to keep that motorcycle playing. So for the touring point of view, 5th and 6th gear, like I was talking about, is gonna be sufficient for highway, especially if you don't drop it down to 40 kilometers per hour or something like that. So that's also a big positive thing. By the way, do have a gear shift indicator light on the console, so fully decked out console. They have taken a book from somewhat like the KTM or even BMW bikes, and lots of information is on display, and it's very easily readable, like I was talking before. And just right now we were just cruising and talking about this motorcycle. The clutch, let's talk about the clutch. It is a hard clutch, it is kind of heavy. It kind of reminds me of my old Duke 390, the 2013 one. Maybe a future version would get a better clutch, but right now it is hard, and I would have wanted it to maybe be a little bit softer.
Now that I've ridden it for a while on the highway, I ducked down on the fairing for once. I was riding straight for most of the time. I can talk about the ergonomics a little bit. First of all, this motorcycle doesn't have very rare set foot pegs, so it's kind of like a sport touring riding position, but you can lean on the handlebars and get to a very aggressive tuck, so it won't be that difficult to take this motorcycle to track. This motorcycle offers phenomenal wind protection, but you do get some wind blast on the helmet because of the windscreen is smaller, but if you duck down a little bit, you're completely protected from the wind. So I think if you just add a taller windscreen, or maybe if you're ducking down a little bit, even at 160 kilometers per hour, you have zero wind blast, and that was really amazing for me because I've never felt something like this on a smaller capacity motorcycle. When comparing with the RC390, I would say it has better rider protection and aerodynamics. Talking about the power, yes, it doesn't feel as much powerful as a traditional RC or an R3, so that's obviously there. The acceleration also doesn't feel that much in your face, but that I guess is something to do with the bigger sprocketing. The power delivery is very gradual, as I've said many times before. Coming back to the ergonomics, handlebars are raised clip-ons, but they're not too high. It's again a very good balance between having good feedback from the front at the same time not tiring out the rider's wrists over long periods of time. If you talk about the seating position, yes, it is upright with a slightly lean forward, much like the naked sport bikes like the Street Triple RS or even the Z900. It's not committed like a fully fared sport bike, but at the same time, like I said, when you're going into corners, it does connect you with the bike reasonably well. I think they've reached a very good position, especially for Indian riders who are about 5'6" to 5'10". This is the perfect height for this motorcycle. There is a lot of room to sit on this bike. It doesn't feel cramped for even taller people. For riding position itself, I would give this motorcycle 9 out of 10. There is not really much I can complain about. The seat is soft but not very soft, which is what I like, and though we didn't really cut the pillion seat comfort, I would say that it is pretty decent from what I've seen on the seat, and it is a decent size pillion seat as well. Overall, on that day, I covered 200 kilometers at a stretch on the TVS Apache RR310, and the riding position did not tire me out at all.
Okay. It does know how to hold a line, that much is there. It's not that I went too aggressive on the corner because I knew the exit wouldn't be so nice. So we're back on NH6 now, which is my favorite highway for review shoots. We don't have any more corners, so you know, the verdict's kinda, I would give it good for so far of whatever I've ridden, but that I don't call cornering. We just got too late into the corner, couldn't really set myself up. But here I can at least show you some filtering. Oh yeah, it's doing pretty well. But it's giving me a lot of confidence to do this type of stuff. I mean, I generally don't do this on a new motorcycle where I'm not really sure of what I'm doing. Here on this bike, well, it's pretty good. I'd probably set the clutch a little differently because even with a little bit of clutch engagement, it's catching up. Oh man, the bumps. At the speeds that we are, even those small bumps are kind of pulling the motorcycle up and down, you know, hopping. It feels pretty decent even on good roads and on bad roads, so that's good. The suspension does have a lot of play to it, which is good on bad roads, but when you have bumps, it is moving up and down a little bit too much. I guess for slow speed maneuvers that is good, but on higher speed I'm not enjoying that feeling. You know, surprisingly, apart from the vibration and a little bit of a clutch adjustment, I could still find no problems with this motorcycle. I do wish that it had more power, but that's about it. I mean, the clutch is a bit hard, which I've talked about, but you know, these are just nitpicking. I mean, what else could you ask for at 2.5 lakhs? I know the current KTM does come with a slipper clutch and ride-by-wire. I wish this one had a slipper clutch as well. Ride-by-wire, well, it doesn't really matter because we're not anyways getting power modes and traction control, so ride-by-wire maybe not be required because it is lesser powered. I think with that kind of power and the way it's being delivered, you don't really need a ride-by-wire throttle. And there is a good amount of feedback from the throttle as well. There's a good amount of feedback from the brakes. The tires, well, for the type of corners that I've done so far, and it's obviously a very hot day, I'm in leathers as usual, but having a hot day obviously means that better track temperatures and tires will be obviously feeling very grippy, so that's a good thing. Who is this motorcycle for? Who is gonna buy the Akula or the Apache RR310? I mean, for me it'll always be the Akula, but for the sake of being correct, let's call it the Apache RR310. Well, TVS has played a very well balanced package game, so the young guy who's probably looking for a nice decent motorcycle which is pretty good on the mileage and is looking for the big bike looks, you know, college student kind of a guy, this will suit him because it gives him the full-fared styling without the full-fared riding ergonomics, which is way too committed, and for that kind of rider it's good. For a guy who wants to tour but is not so comfortable touring on a naked motorcycle because of the wind blast problem, that kind of a person will also be feeling very benefiting on this, especially if you think that CBR 250 is kind of looking dated, and on the other hand CBR 250 is not getting the upgrade. It was supposed to get the upgrade to 310, sorry, the 300 CBR 300R, and that's not coming to India. They're just launching a reversion CBR 250 with ABS, so instead of that, this can be a better alternative for most people because this also comes with ABS, it comes with Michelin tires, and apart from the vibrations, everything is better. I mean, the aerodynamics is definitely better. It's got a decent amount of top end, so it can be a good alternative to those who are looking for a CBR 250R sort of sports tourer, or even somebody who's looking at the R3 but maybe is trying to save a little bit on the budget. He can also try to have a look at this bike. Though I've ridden the R3 and it's far more refined, it feels far more powerful, and it has a very nice power delivery smoothness which is coming out of that parallel twin engine. So a feel of the R3 cannot be really replicated by this bike, and on the R3 it is more softer, and now it comes with Metzeler tires, though it used to come with MRFs, so R3 has moved up quite a lot in its tech and kit, but still R3 feels a little bit soft around in the suspension setup, and this is still soft but it is better than the R3. So maybe if you're getting a bike that you maybe take it to the track once in a while and still do touring, it would be good. I mean, I remember TVS guys talking at the launch that they wanted this motorcycle to have both the rideability in city and highway and a track enthusiast motorcycle at the same time, and at that point of time I thought that was asking too much of a motorcycle because you cannot do everything that well, but after riding it I think they have managed a pretty good balance. Obviously there's a trade-off, like the front end dive and all that is there when you're hard braking, and the riding position will be feeling a little less committed for track when you want to hunch up and stuff, but the gearbox, that's really clunky. I mean, it's hard to move down, up and down the gear. So they have managed to strike a pretty good balance. This or the R3, I think if you have the budget for the R3, there's nothing like it. This or the RC, a lot of people will be asking. The RC390, not talking about the 200, definitely a lot better than the 200, specifically since this has a lot more power and ABS. But comparing with the RC390, I would say that the RC390 has less vibrations, it has more power, it has ride-by-wire. Handling wise, I think that would be almost the same because I wouldn't put this below the RC without riding both the bikes back to back. But I think because the RC has a harder suspension in corners, that would do marginally better. But when you talk about practicality, this is gonna be way better than an RC. So between an RC and this, for the average rider, I would choose this, who wants to do a little bit of city, highway and some touring mixed into the bunch. Track days, once or twice a year this bike can handle, and most people do that sort of track days here. So for that kind of rider, even then I'd choose the Apache RR310. And a lot of people call me KTM fanboy, but that's not true actually. I have to give my judgment unbiasedly. But yes, those who are very concerned about vibrations, they'd rather stick better to the R3 or even the RC390, which has less vibrations than this. So that's my full impression of the Apache RR310. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Hit that bell button and hit that subscribe button if you're a new viewer, and share this video. It really helps our channel get some more views and some more subscribers. We are not sponsored by anyone. It's our own money. We're making these videos. We're editing for hours and hours. So if you guys just hit that button and help us along the way, it makes a lot more sense to us to make more such videos for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon. This is Rahul. Goodbye.